Li Changgong has been in a bad mood recently, because he heard that the chaos from Jiangnan district had won several battles in Fremont. Not only did he become a world-famous strong man, but he became stronger again. This made Li Changgong, who had been defeated by Zhang Yi and had always hoped to take revenge one day, feel even more hopeless. If only I had led the troops there. Li Changgong rubbed his temple and felt very bad. The gap between him and Zhang Yi is getting bigger and bigger. If they duel again now, Zhang Yi will be able to kill him instantly with just a single move. But it's too late to regret. Nowadays, the world doesn't know what changes are happening. After learning about Chernobyl, more mutants began to appear all over the world. The quantity and quality of aliens are the foundation of a strong force. And Li Changgong began to feel increasingly anxious about managing the Northwest region. His position was not obtained in an honorable way. Shortly after the end of the world, he relied on his powerful military force to force Zheng Yongxiu, the supreme commander of the region at that time, to step down. However, the old marshal has a very high prestige in the Northwest Army. Although he has stepped down, there are still many of his former subordinates in the army, and most of them hold important positions. If Li Changgong wanted to manage the Northwest region well, he had to rely on their power. Over the past 3 years, he has purged some of the old officials and worked hard to place his own confidence in various key departments. But it is still impossible to completely eliminate the so-called remnants of the previous dynasty. Why do you still control the Northwest region? Isn't it because he is a strong man from Ypsilon? Even if some people in the Northwest region are dissatisfied with him, who is willing to take him over and protect the tens of millions of people here? Now, the situation is different. More and more mutants began to appear. Xiao Lai, the god of war among the 5 great gods of war, was also promoted to Ypsilon. His worries grew heavier. Boom, boom, boom. There was a knock on the door outside. Li Changgong restrained his emotions and sat behind his desk with a dignified look. Come in. The person who walked in was a young man with slightly long hair and a cold expression. The second sky god of war, Baijan, is Li Changgong's confidant who was promoted by him. Commander, follow your instructions and bring Xiao Lai to. Baijan made way as he spoke, and Xiao Lai, who was behind him, walked in front of him and respectfully gave him a standard military salute. Captain of the 5 Extremes War Gods, Xiao Lai, the war god among men, is reporting for duty. Please give us your instructions, Commander. Li Changgong raised his eyes and stared at Xiao Lai. His gaze was deep and Xiao Lai quickly lowered his head, not daring to meet his gaze. Li Changgong leaned back in his chair and placed his hands folded on the table. After a while, he asked, Xiao Lai, how long have you been in the army? Xiao Lai quickly replied, I joined the army in 1943, and this year is my 10th year in the army. Li Changgong nodded. That's a very old veteran. You've worked hard to defend our country over the years. I'm very grateful for your dedication. But as a soldier, I have to stand up when the country and the people need me. Right? Comrade Xiao Lai. Xiao Lai felt something was wrong, but he still said honestly, That's right, Commander. For the country and the people, I am willing to give everything. Li Changgong laughed and picked up a document and threw it forward. Very good. Now there is such a difficult task. Looking at the entire Northwest region, I think you are qualified for it. Xiao Lai walked slowly to the desk and picked up the document. Li Changgong motioned for him to take a look, and Xiao Lai opened the file. This was actually a transfer letter to transfer Xiao Lai to the northernmost part of the Northwest region, to Ebony Town adjacent to Fremont. The Northwest region is very long, with more than 2,000 kilometers from Chang'an to the northernmost town of Wumu. You know, this distance is almost as long as that from Chang'an to Tianhai City. This was clearly an exile. There is a shortage of supplies and it is extremely cold, and they have to face Fremont in the north, and in the west they have to be on guard against harassment from the chaotic alien forces in the Middle East at any time. It's a complete chore. Xiao Lai's hesitation fell into Li Changgong's eyes. He raised his eyelids and asked in a dissatisfied tone, What's the matter, Major General Xiao Lai? Are you dissatisfied with this transfer? Xiao Lai's facial muscles twitched twice, and he quickly shouted, How could that be, Commander? I will strictly follow your orders. Li Changgong said calmly. It's not about following my orders. It's about following the call of the district and the people. Yes. Xiaolai took the transfer letter, bowed seriously, then turned and left the office. After he left, Baijian asked, Commander-in-Chief, do you think Xiaolai will go to Umu Town to take up his post? Li Changgong sneered. Do you think he can afford the consequences of disobeying the army? Baijian understood and said no more. It's true that Xiaolai is Ypsilon, but ordinary people simply don't understand how big the gap between Ypsilons is. Today, Li Changgong is already a black chariot-level alien with an alien index of 23,000 points. He has the best resources in the entire region. And Xiaolai, although is a genius, his talent may not be inferior to Li Changgong. But he doesn't have too many resources and is also feared by Li Changgong, so now he is just a white chariot with an abnormality index of 15,000 points. If Xiaolai dared to be disloyal, Li Changgong would kill him just for no reason. This time, Li Changgong was prepared for Xiaolai to disobey the army. But he didn't care at all. Li Changgong pointed at Baijian and said, From today on, everyone in the entire area will be tested every day. Once a person with a talent above Delta level is found, he must be sent to Chang'an City immediately. Absolutely. No one who threatens his rule will be allowed to exist in the Northwest region. Yes, Commander, Baijian said. Xiaolai left the military headquarters. It was still snowing outside. The Northwest region was particularly cold, and there were few pedestrians on the road outside. Although technology is advancing rapidly, underground fortresses can be built in extremely cold environments to allow ordinary people to survive. But in the cities above ground, you can almost always see soldiers and special forces personnel. Xiaolai's military boots stepped on the snow. The road had just been cleared a few hours ago, and there was now a thin layer of snow on it. He left 2 lines of footprints on the empty street. He did not take a car but walked back to his residence. Faintly, accompanied by the sound of wind, noisy sounds came from the corner of the street. Let me go. What are you going to do? I am a second lieutenant. I have served the district. I have fought for the commander. You can't do this to me. Xiaolai narrowed his eyes and turned his head to look, and saw a military office building. Several fully armed soldiers were escorting a young soldier with shaved hair to the door, and they stuffed him into a military vehicle without saying a word. Xiaolai did not stop, as similar scenes had happened many times recently. The second coming of the mutation era has changed the world situation. More and more aliens are appearing. Li Changgong was even more suspicious, so he began to capture talented aliens wantonly. No one knows what his purpose is. At this moment, a storm was brewing in Xiaolai's heart. The news that Xiaolai had been transferred spread like wildfire, and many people were extremely shocked after hearing the news. The second most important person in the army, an Ypsilon-level alien second only to Li Changgong, can be said to be the main force in protecting Chang'an City. It was indeed puzzling that he was transferred from Chang'an City to a remote northwestern military town. However, since the order was issued directly by the Supreme Commander of the military, everyone discussed it in a low voice in private. Internal struggles are nothing new to them. Even someone as strong as Xiaolai would be exiled if he was found to be a threat to Li Changgong's position. The courtyard of Xiaolai's house. He sat under the eaves in his military uniform, watching the falling snow outside the window. The dark green shirt fits his body tightly. He looks tall and brave, a natural soldier. There was a knock on the door outside the courtyard, and Xiaolai's wife hurried to open the door. After a round of greetings, 2 people walked in. A tall and burly bald man, and a thin man with a body as straight as a gun. Among the 5 polar gods of war, there are North Pole God of War, Qin Jiahao, and South Pole God of War, Di Fei. The 2 were Xiaolai's best comrades in arms, and it was no exaggeration to say that their relationship was like that of brothers. The 2 were received by Xiaolai's wife into the courtyard. After they were served tea and snacks, Madame Xiao sensibly closed the door and left. Xiaolai turned his head and looked at them without saying anything. Brother, I heard that you will be sent to the northernmost ebony town? Qin Jiahao came up and asked directly. Really? Do you really want to go to that godforsaken place and starve to death every day? Every door there will be frozen into a block of ice. The two of them sat down next to Xiao Lai. Di Fei looked at him and said seriously, "Why don't you go talk to the commander again? With your strength, you shouldn't go to that kind of place." Hearing this, Xiao Lai suddenly laughed. He picked up the teapot at hand and poured the steaming tea into the cup. He drank tea and said, "The commander-in-chief personally gave me an order. Do you think it should be changed?" Di Fei suddenly stood up excitedly. "If you can't do it alone, then let's go together. Call Chi Yuquan and Baijian. Our Gigi war god is the commander's confidant. He has been by his side for many years and has fought for him all the time. How could he do this to the brother who has made the most contributions?" Di Fei's voice became louder and louder, and his tone became extremely excited. "Di Fei, keep your voice down. If you keep talking like this, the whole city of Chang'an will be able to hear you." Xiao Lai waved at him, and Di Fei sat down willingly. Chen Jiahao, who looked like a fool, said to Xiao Lai very calmly, "The commander seems to be a different person now. Recently, I heard that he started to capture talented aliens wantonly, and then he knew where to send them. We can no longer trust the people around us. Many of our old friends have been transferred from core positions. Even you, my brother, have been exiled to the borderland. If this continues, I'm afraid one day our lives will not be guaranteed." Xiao Lai listened silently. He drank his tea, but his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. He stared at a branch of plum blossoms in the corner of the courtyard. It grows out of the cracks in the rocks. Its branches are slender, but its flowers are beautiful. Di Fei lowered his voice and said, "Brother, are you really planning to retire in the desert? If you really leave, your prestige in the army will be completely diluted. I'm afraid he will take action against you. He trusts everyone now and is always trying to become stronger. You are the only Epsilon in the Northwest region, and he tolerates you. I even heard that he was worried about the emergence of a second you, so he tried to capture talented aliens. It's even possible that those people have already been executed. Brother." Di Fei looked at the indifferent Xiao Lai and seemed very anxious. "You can't just sit there and wait for death." Only then did Xiao Lai turn around and look at Di Fei. Suddenly, he smiled. "You kid, you always look so reckless." "I've passed it." He held the cup in his hand, and in his eyes, there was a flame burning like a wildfire. "It's time to take action." Xiao Lai prepared to leave Chang'an City. In the past 3 years, as the strongest and most meritorious war god among all the extreme war gods, his connections in the army have always been very good. Because he was sent to the frontier, many people dared not come to attend his farewell banquet. Chen Jiahao and Di Fei organized a private party at home in their name. Those who came to the meeting were all officers with whom Xiao Lai had a good relationship in the army. They also have a special identity, that is, they are former subordinates of the former commander-in-chief, Zheng Yongxiu. The banquet was very sumptuous, and all kinds of wine and drinks were taken out by the three of them to entertain their colleagues. At first, everyone was still a little restrained, but as the wine went down their stomachs, they gradually relaxed. "General Xiao, think about how glorious it was when we were together. You were in charge of the Extreme War God and his special forces. I was in charge of the 6th City Defense Force. It's a pity that it's now, The speaker was a general named, who used to be the general of the 6th part of the City Defense Army. But later, the Wulwan Empire invaded, and the City Defense Forces were almost wiped out. Later, when the army was reorganized, half of his power was stripped away. Now he, like Xiao Lai, is at the most frustrated time in his life." Xiao Lai was holding the bottle in his hand. Seeing that the wine was almost finished, he gave Di Fei a look. Di Fei walked over and locked the door of the box from the inside. This box was very spacious, with 3 tables inside, and about 20 to 30 people there, all of whom were key members of the military. Bang! The sound of the door closing was soft and just loud enough for everyone to hear. Everyone in the box looked at Di Fei. An officer, whose face was red from drinking, pointed at Di Fei with a bottle of wine and asked, "General Di, why are you closing the door?" At this time, Xiao Lai stood up and Qin Jiahao next to him also stood up. The ultimate god of war, representing the highest combat power in the entire northwest region below Li Changgong. The three of them stood in front of the box, bringing great pressure to everyone, which made them gradually realize that today's banquet was too ordinary. Xiao Lai walked to the center of the crowd, first glanced at everyone with a serious look, and then slowly walked away. I asked you all to come here today to practice for me. I don't need to tell you much about what happened in the district recently. You all know it. The commander-in-chief never trusts anyone. Even me, Xiao Lai, will be purged by him. Everyone here was promoted by the former commander, Marshal Zheng Yongxiu. We are all his faction. After I leave, I believe everyone will have a better life in the future. Originally, everyone present had some unhappy expressions, but after hearing what Xiao Lai said, their faces became solemn. Many people lowered their heads, frowned, and their drunkenness gradually disappeared. At this time, the senior General Zhong Hai shouted, "General Xiao Lai, do you know what you are doing now?" Xiao Lai immediately replied, "Of course I know what I am doing." There was a hawk-like arrogance in his eyes. The situation is clear before our eyes. We, the former commander's old subordinates, can really be tolerated by Li Changgong. He started arresting people without paying any attention to them. In the past 3 years, your powers have been repeatedly stripped away. He looked at Zhong Hai and said, "Brother Qin, you were a general in charge of 20,000 troops before. How much power do you have now? The best outcome for you now is to resign as soon as possible and live in the assigned house for the rest of your life. It's hard to even live to the end of your life." He pointed at the other people in the field and read out their names one by one. Lieutenant Colonel He Chi-huan, Major Mao's son, General Tian Huanzheng. You are all like me, labeled as the former commander. Before, there were a few of us. He pointed at the three of them. Li Changgong will do something to you. But I have been exiled to the border. What will happen to you then? Have you ever thought about it? These words made everyone at the scene silent, and they became more and more anxious and uneasy in their hearts. Several officers picked up the bottles of wine in their hands and poured the liquid directly into their stomachs. Of course they understood what Xiao Lai said. Say something so rebellious, Xiao Lai. Do you want to kill all of us? Dong Zhonghai stood up suddenly, his face flushed with excitement. I can pretend that I didn't hear what you said today. I haven't been here today, he said as he was about to leave. Xiao Lai called out to him from behind. Are you really willing to give up everything you have now, even your life? Once you walk out of this door, Li Changgong will definitely let you go. Cooperating with us now is your only way out. Zhonghai's figure suddenly stopped. He put his hands on the handlebars and no one stopped him. After hesitating for a long time, he turned around and stared at Xiao Lai. This is a rebellion. Many people will die and everyone around us will die because of us. Xiao Lai threw the wine glass in his hand onto the ground, stared at the man and said, Failure is rebellion, and victory is revolution, right? Although the night of revolution is short, its glory is long-lasting. I, Xiao Lai, will enjoy this glory alone. Some young soldiers have been persuaded by Xiao Lai. They are only in their 30s and have a long life ahead of them, who would want to be pushed to the margins of power. Even with Li Changgong's current madness, they didn't know when they would die at the hands of his military police. Dong Zhonghai had a gloomy face and pointed at Xiao Lai, Di Fei, and Qin Jiahao, and started scolding them. You three are crazy. You want to die. Why do you have to drag us down with you? You keep talking about revolution, but what can you use to fight Li Changgong? He strode forward and grabbed Xiao Lai by the collar. His eyebrows stood up, and his eye sockets were about to burst. In the age of aliens, a strong alien can change the situation of the entire war. Who will stop Li Changgong then? Xiao Lai stared at Zhong Hai, and suddenly he smiled. General Qin, this means that as long as I can stop Li Changgong, you are willing to stand on our side, right? He smiled, but there was a dark light flashing in his eyes. There was an expression of great surprise on Zhong Hai's face. General Xiao, could it be that you? Xiao Lai clenched the bottle, lowered his head, and said in a deep voice, 3 years ago, Li Changgong relied on force to rebel and killed Commander Zheng Yongxiu. Since then, I have been waiting for this day. Don't worry, I have the confidence to deal with him. I'm not a fool. I won't be stupid enough to seek death before I have enough strength. Dong Zhonghai's expression changed. He began to hesitate, but there was an obvious movement in his eyes. The other officers began to whisper. Xiao Lai pointed at Chen Jiahao and Di Fei and said, "You don't believe me. If the three of us stand together, will you still believe me?" Chen Jiahao and Di Fei didn't need to say anything. They just stood up straight and stood behind Xiao Lai to show their attitude. This time, everyone's mentality changed significantly. Dong Zhonghai swallowed his saliva, walked over and grasped Xiao Lai's hands. If that's the case, then it's worth doing. Commander Zheng Yongxiu's revenge should be avenged by us old subordinates. That night, Bai Zhan came to Li Changgong's office to report. Commander-in-Chief, tonight, Xiao Lai has gathered a group of officers for a banquet at his home. Maybe they want to cause trouble. Bai Zhan lowered his voice, his eyes solemn. At this time, Li Changgong was reading a book, Business History, an autobiography of the leader of Silla surnamed Li more than half a century ago. Hearing Bai Zhan's words, he rolled his eyes, but sneered disapprovingly. It's possible. Xiao Lai is not that stupid. Rebellion? Now the Northwest region is full of my people. In terms of military strength, I am the best. Even if he is crazy, everyone else may be crazy. Bai Zhan was a little anxious when he saw that Li Changgong was not worried at all. Commander, I think you should underestimate Xiao Lai. Bang! Before he could finish the rest of his words, Li Changgong's book slammed heavily on the table. Li Changgong stared at Bai Zhan. Look down on Xiao Lai? Do I need to think highly of him? He is just a talented kid from a junior officer's family. Do you want to compare him with me?